Chapter 554, Gift of the World. A person's class is tied to their identity in essence, their role in the world. Commoners were hardly worth anything, collateral who were meant to fill up the space in a large world. In essence, they were extras by default. The higher the tier of one's class, the higher the value attributed to them. And with this value comes privileges. These privileges are not innate abilities, but special treatment granted to the person by the world. Just as billionaires back on Earth were granted some special authority and benefits by governments and the people around them, all due to the legal tenders in their possession, this world of H-Tray rewards those it deems to be worthy. It isn't something you can reject or change. For powers like, a choice can be made to use this power or not. But, for characteristics that the class provides, there is no way to evade it. It was simply the free gift of the world. So, I'm stuck with this? Ray asked as he raised his brow, looking at Ader, who shrugged and sighed at the same time. Pretty much. Just as Ray could not change the number of stats he would be getting from every level up, he couldn't alter the properties of his other privileges. That included the one he dreaded most. Immunity to curses or all ailments and negative status conditions in the world. On the bright side, Master is pretty much protected from all kinds of harm, but the downside is that you'll stop being yourself. Then there's no bright side. Ader rubbed his chin, almost as if thinking about what to say, but a smile radiated from his face as he finally responded. Let's try to be optimistic, okay? Why you? Before Ray could get upset, his feelings were suppressed again. He was already getting used to the constant shift in his emotional state, almost as if his current self was acclimating to what the system was doing. It wouldn't be long until he was completely desensitized to it. The good news is that the system should already have a threshold and a standard for what it deems to be a negative status condition. As a result, you should try your best not to go over that limit. Ader responded. Indeed, Ray also noticed that his more basic emotions were still intact. It was only when he felt something sudden or intense that the suppression kicked in. I guess I'll actively do my best to keep my body and mind under check so the system doesn't do it for me. Precisely. That should slow down the erosion. Ader's choice of words should have been quite frightening for Ray. After all, this meant he was slowly losing himself due to the system's interference, but... Calm. Gotta stay calm. Ray told himself. Worrying about things would only make matters worse. He had to stay under the radar while also trying his best to use his logic and emotions to figure out a solution. Is there a solution? Maybe get another class. Though, I reckon some kind of control will still be placed on you if the class is somewhat similar to this or better. Ray felt a frown forming on his face. Does that mean that Adonis Hero class is also? Not really. That is a special case indeed. Ader said with a dismissive smile on his face. Upon hearing this, Ray smiled in relief. So that means Adonis didn't have to deal with this. That's good to know. Feeling this good sensation wash over him, Ray didn't feel any suppression take place. He realized that the system probably didn't see relief as something negative. As long as my mind isn't in distress, it won't kick in, huh? That's both bad and good. If he could feel good sensations but not bad ones, that meant his emotional perspective would be somewhat skewed. But, the good side was that he hadn't completely lost his feeling of empathy. At least I can still enjoy some good things in life. The issue now was figuring out how to get rid of this current class of his and get something that would allow him to become a much more complete person. Yes, Ray appreciated the power that came with having an S tier, but the consequences were too great. He couldn't bear it. Do you have any idea how to get a new class that has good privileges but doesn't control me like this? In the end, he had only Ader to turn to for help. Once again, Ader placed a palm on his chin, deep in thought about the question proffered to him. I'm not sure of the conditions necessary, so it's hard to say. The people that design these things make it quite difficult for an accurate guess to be made about stuff like this. Hold on. The people that design these things. You mean Seraph and the whole domain of God thing? Seraph? No, not her. Yet. My memory is a bit foggy on the details, but I know it's best to simply go with the flow for now. Your mission is to save this world, right? Ray nodded his head very slowly. Then let's focus on that for now. One task at a time, right? Why yet? You should be able to see and understand more after that is complete. I don't know much either, and I am not sure if I can trust these memories of mine all that well. All of Ader's words rang true within Ray, so the latter knew he wasn't lying to him. I understand. Ray smiled and nodded. Let's take it one step at a time. A portal opened in front of Ray, leading back to the room where he woke up in. As the purple distortions shone brightly and reflected on Ray's body, Ader stepped forward with a question. So, what is the first order of business? His entire emotions were in check, so Ray's stoic face turned to meet Ader, his single eye brilliantly shining with light. Well, it's been nearly 3 months since I went to sleep. There was a lot to unpack, and if this was how much his own body had changed, Ray knew there was no way everything could have remained the same. I'd like to hear all about everything I've missed. Asterisk. 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 Thanks for reading. Once again, I know you all have predictions as to the direction that this arc is going in, but you have no idea what's coming. Chapter 555, The Changes He Missed. Ray sat on his bed in silence, his gaze directed at the floating Ader who sat in midair. He hadn't forgotten that his familiar could do that, but something about seeing him get so comfortable in the air seemed bizarre every single time. Still, other than a slight smile of amusement, he didn't display any other emotion. His exposed eye simply stared blankly as he made himself comfortable on the luxurious bed that Ader had prepared for him. It's just like Esm's bed. How did he know that I prefer this? Right now, Ray was in a black long-sleeve shirt, with dark trousers covering most of his legs. He was barefoot, though, so his feet and hands were exposed as he sat and waited patiently. So. You can start now. Ray had prepared his heart. He made sure to remain calm no matter what news he heard, though he already knew it would be impossible for him to fully suppress everything. I just need to try my best to calmly analyze everything I hear. Alicia is currently under a coma. She hasn't been able to wake up since she fell asleep due to the curse. Curse? Ray raised an eyebrow. Alicia also went into a deep sleep. Was it because of her use of the skill? She didn't have enough mana to pull off summoning an entity like the one that emerged back then. That means she used the unknown box that I gave Adonis. As a result, the after effect of using such an item, a random curse befell her. A curse? There was a curse attached to it? I didn't see it when I used my appraisal on the item, though. Ray was trying his best not to let his feelings of worry and anxiety overflow. Of course, he was very concerned about Alicia. If this was indeed a curse, and she had been asleep for so long, then her current condition was beyond worrying. He was even feeling hints of fright. But, through it all, he had to swallow the negative emotions and handle things as calmly as possible. If he didn't, the system would do it for him. Certain curses aren't normally registered under standard appraisal effects. They apply more like cause and effect, the natural consequence of an action. Just as Ray could not perceive the curse that was bestowed on the members of the Carrie Blanc group at the time, even though they would perish if they did not make it to the Dark Gathering. He couldn't see the effects of curses that were yet to be active. If they had neglected the Dark Gathering, and the curse began to affect them negatively, that's when the negative status effects would have popped up. Precisely. Ada responded. Curses function in a very distinct manner from magic, since the more subtle ones take root without any recognition. I see. But that shouldn't be a problem for you now, Master. I'm certain all of your abilities have been heightened to an incredible degree, so you should be able to perceive things that you were previously unable to. Ader said with a knowing smile. Is that so? Yes. It wouldn't be surprising if you can finally detect the curse on this object. Out of nowhere, Ader brought forth the unknown box. His smile broadened as he raised his brow, looking at Ray with a prompting gaze. Ray took a moment to properly understand what he was looking at before even saying anything. It looks different. In the past, Ray only perceived a box that warbled, one which had incredible power. But now, he was seeing something completely different. It's giving off an ominous vibe. Indeed. I made this item myself, to see the limits of what I could create in this world. You made it? Indeed. Though, it seems this is my limit. The flaw of this tool has far too many downsides to be considered truly viable. But, since I'm immune to all negative status conditions and curses, that means I can use it. Right. What for, though? Ray sighed as he looked at Ader, unsure of how to answer the question. He already had the skill of the item at his disposal, but after that was gone. I can't use the skill any longer. So if I had the item. You don't need this defective thing, Master. Pretty much all of your skills are already at the maximum level. Besides, it only has a few more tries on it anyway. Ader responded with a nonchalant demeanor. I'll figure out some use for it, though, so do not worry. Oh? I see. Ray muttered. Can you make a similar item like that, though? Something that can perhaps alleviate Alicia's curse. Ader narrowed his gaze as he looked at Ray. Tense silence simmered between the two as the master waited for his familiar to give a response. No, I deal with chaos, so it's pretty much impossible for me to possess powers that can positively affect entities. At least, not without even more consequences. TCH. Ray clicked his tongue as he closed his eyes. He took a few seconds to process all the information he had received, searching for several alternatives in his head. After coming up with a few, he calmed himself down and let go of the remnant vestiges of anxiety and guilt that threatened to swallow him whole. It's all my fault that she's like this. But I can't focus on that now. Tightening his fist, he decided to focus on a solution rather than dwell so obsessively on the problem. After this conversation, I'll have to see her for myself. He whispered, a slight glimmer of light flashing in his eye. If it's me, I should be able to do something to fix her. Since that was somewhat partially addressed in his mind, Ray returned his focus on the topic at hand, that is, the changes that had occurred in the months of his absence. Alicia was just one key change, but what of the others? How about my other classmates? Adonis and everyone else? About that. Ader seemed a bit more serious as he began to speak on the matter. Adonis mysteriously vanished a week after the incident, and there has been no sighting of him since then. What? Ray's eye widened as he heard the shocking news. He's gone, Master. Asterisk. 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 Thanks for reading. Well, there goes the first round of news for Ray. Let's brace ourselves for more. Chapter 556, The Changes He Missed. I don't understand. Ray murmured, stroking his chin as his narrowed eye depicted hints of disbelief. Adonis would never bail on the group. Ray knew he was very cynical and distrusting most of the time. He found it difficult to trust most people, especially after all he had experienced. But there were a few people who managed to break through that wall of his. Adonis Levi was one of those people. He genuinely wanted to help this world. He's always had that personality since we were in school, and he still hasn't changed. At least, not by much. Sure, he was dealing with some issues of inadequacies, but Ray always knew he would overcome them. No matter what, it made no sense for him to escape. Perhaps I ought to inform you of the incidents that led up to your battle and eventual collapse in the capital. Ader offered. That way, you can get the full perspective on everything. Right now, Ray was extremely limited by the information he had. He didn't know anything about the struggles of his classmates before his arrival, or the aftermath of his battle with the strongest foe he had ever faced. This absence of sufficient information was bound to skew his understanding of the current situation, hence, influencing his judgment on them. Since Ader had been taking care of things for nearly 3 months, he would have gotten the full story, making him the perfect person to inform him of the details. I think that would be good. Ray nodded. And so, without any further tangents, the familiar began to divulge everything. The calamity that befell the capital. The hell? With a bulging eye that seemed like it would explode at any given moment, Ray listened very attentively until the conclusion of Ader's exposition. I knew Billy was dead, and I suspected that Snow died too. But Eric? Him too. Just like with most of his classmates, Ray wasn't particularly close with Eric. They hardly spoke to each other, though they had a few things in common. We both loved this world. I liked that about him. Ray cast a sad smile as he sighed, finding yet another reason to blame himself. Unlike me, he was a very smart guy too. Even when we were in school, he usually got near perfect grades. Sure, he acted smug a lot of times, but Ray never really disliked him. Eric wasn't among the people who mocked him, and while they were completely different, they had very similar sets of ideals. For that alone, his death seemed a little more impactful than the demise of Billy and Snow. If that was all, then perhaps Ray could rest easy. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Nearly 12% of the population died in the entire incident. 39% were badly injured, with a good number of them in critical state. Some capital denizens died after the calamity was over, which extended the number of casualties to a whopping 23% of the population. That's tens of thousands of people. All of them dead. Ray couldn't allow himself to feel guilty, even if he wanted to. Still, he found it disrespectful to the dead that he couldn't even cry for their sake. Sure, he could manipulate the glands in his eyes to secrete tears, but that would not be genuine. He wanted to feel bad. So many deaths, so much catastrophe. And yet he had to feel nothing. I hope you do not blame yourself, Master. Even if you had arrived early, more people would have been saved, at the very least. Ray whispered, his head downcast as he squeezed his fingers against each other. Emotions had to be bottled in, but merely going through the casualties as well as the consequences of the demise of all those people was enough to conjure such a reaction out of Ray. I'm not saying people wouldn't have died. Based on the nature of the invasion, it would have cost lives either way. But I could have saved even a couple thousand more people. Ader said nothing, simply staring at his master. It was due to my hubris. After killing that commander, I should have known the dragons would make their move eventually. For the first week or two, I steeled my mind in preparation, but they never showed up. So I somehow wrote it off without realizing it. Even if they had shown up during those 2 weeks that he expected them, would he really have been able to stop them? 4 commanders and a general. If it was left to the version of him from back then, how would he have fared? Not to talk of a dragon lord showing up. Ray shook his head and laughed at himself. I would have lost badly. Yet I spent my time worrying about Adrian's manipulations, playing a silly game in the adventurer's city. He should have stuck to the goal he had from the start. Grinding. I should never have stopped grinding. He thought to himself, staring at his 2 hands. I'm not as strong as I can possibly be. So there's no reason for me to stop now. I admire your resolve, Master, but you still shouldn't blame yourself. The enemies are to blame for putting you in such a position, so you should focus your rage on them. Ray chuckled in response to those words. Is that what you did? Pardon me. I mean, I'm sure you also had the same thoughts I'm having. If you had arrived earlier, perhaps these things wouldn't have happened the way they turned out. Well, of course, I know you had important business to attend to, and we'll get to that eventually. But didn't you have those thoughts of regret? Ray asked, a broad smile playing on his face. It would be a lie to say I didn't. Things would have been quite different if I had been present at that moment. So you're saying you could have defeated that thing? If you were present, that is. Haha. It would be a rather difficult fight. Ader scratched his head, causing the crimson strands to dance in the air. He had a playful smile on his face, though. But would you win? For a moment, the atmosphere soaked up silence. Ray cast a piercing gaze on Ader, while the latter finally ceased his joking look and took on a more serious demeanor. I am not sure. He finally responded. I still have no clue what manner of beast that was, or what power he used against you in the fight. Ray remained silent as he watched Ader go on. Since it's a divine beast, though, I'd expect it to be stronger than I am. I'm very weak, after all. But would you win? The question echoed once again. I would. The tension evaporated in the air as Ray nodded as he stared at Ader. I could tell somehow. After all, now that my perception of everything has changed, you look entirely different in my eyes now. Oh? How do I look to you, Master? Ader asked with a brilliant smile. Well. Ray's narrowed eye glowed brightly as information about Ader popped up in an instant. Name Ader. Ray spake Nico. Class Absolute Summon. Level 101. Life Force, 1000. Mana Level, 1500. Combat Ability, 2500. Stat Points, 10,000. Skills. $1 yen / euro pound / K. Alignment Chaotic Evil. An unknown entity whose true form remains a mystery, but takes the form of a cat. It is a great trickster with malevolent desires. It is a wicked entity. Stay away from it. I don't understand it myself. I can now see the glitches that Esm was mentioning back then. I guess it's because of my upgraded appraisal, but what about Esm's case? Ray wondered to himself. Before he could fully process things, however, Ader interrupted his thoughts. Well, I did tell you, Master, that I was the only familiar you really need. He puffed his chest out and smiled proudly. And I still mean that. Without those two summons I would have died, though. Well. They're exceptions. The floating familiar chuckled nervously. Upon bringing up the phoenixes, Ray swiftly remembered something else, the final familiar that he summoned back then. Now that I think about it, the purple egg should have hatched now, R.I. Master, with all due respect. We should stick to the topic at hand. One thing at a time, right? Ader swiftly interrupted, smiling as sweetly as possible. Ray felt an awkward tingle on his skin, and he could see the slight unease that twinkled in Ader's eyes as he stared at his face. Fine then. Let's go back to Adonis. He sighed, his thoughts on the other things mellowing out as he focused on the hero's disappearance. What's this you say about a letter? Asterisk. 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 Thanks for reading. I'm guessing you've all noticed the differences in Ader's status window. Guess he leveled up a whole lot while he was away. I know what you're all itching for, though. Don't worry. In time. Chapter 557, The Changes He Missed. The day that Adonis was confirmed to be missing, they found a letter in his room. The thing seemed to have been written in a hurry, and it was addressed to everyone, his classmates, the Royal Council, and all who cared to see. It was. I am deeply sorry it has to be this way, and that it took me so long to see, but I finally realize my mistakes. I thought I could help everyone, and save this world, but my calculations were wrong. I made so many errors, and those miscalculations cost us so many lives. I can see those mistakes now. And I know I have to rectify them. Don't bother searching for me. You won't be able to find me. I now recognize that for me to truly save everyone, even those who have fallen, I need far more strength than I currently possess. A journey beckons to me. It will be fraught with danger, but I shall overcome. I shall survive and return once again, a much more experienced and capable hero. Do not fear. Ray, Lucielle, everyone. You no longer need to worry about me or yourselves. Even though I will shoulder this responsibility alone, it will yield the best of results. Wish me good fortune. I will save you all. Ray found the gears in his head turning as he read through the contents of the letter. He was stunned by what he was reading, what appeared to be some sort of childish manifesto from Adonis. Is he stupid? How can he think to do this alone? Those were the first words that Ray uttered after seeing the letter's contents. It was a rhetorical question, considering how he was well aware of Adonis' intelligence. He's always been the most intuitive out of all of us. Ray itched his head as he reread the message on the paper in his hands. Even after seeing everything that went down, he really wants to go at it alone. In the end, he could not resonate with the hero's reasoning. The most logical solution to the matter at hand would be for everyone to recoup their strength and figure out a way to ward off the inevitable external aggression to come. And what's this BS about us not worrying about him and ourselves? If an invasion happens now, what are we supposed to do? Should they just fold their hands and wait for his return? Ray shook his head, handing the letter back to Ader after reading it one final time. What do you think he means by this letter? Do you have any idea where he went, or where he's going? He asked. I have no idea where he's headed to, or where he is at this moment, master. Ader said with a slight bow. As for the meaning of this letter, it is possible that he feels somewhat responsible for what happened in the capital and desires to atone. Atone? By running away from the problem. Most likely, he'll be running towards the problem. Ader said with a smile. Wait. You mean the northern continent? The Dragon Kingdom. Draconic Empire, actually. It's merely a guess and observation on my part, if you may. The way the familiar shrugged in nonchalance made Ray slightly agitated. Ader never really seemed to take most things seriously. Even after my power was exposed. He still chose to leave. Is it because I was unconscious? The teenager muttered, a crestfallen expression on his face. I don't get it, honestly. With Alicia in her coma, and everyone in the current state they're in. I expected Adonis to at least be there for them. To leave everyone and everything behind. It didn't seem like something the hero would do. I guess I didn't know him as much as I thought I did. Ray smiled sadly, once again interrupted by Ader's deep voice. He isn't the only one that left, though. Trisha also went to the Adventurer's City just a few days ago. She said she was done with the training she could receive here, and she wanted more practical experiences with large monsters over there. Apparently, even after the appearances of the dragons and the divine beast, Ray's classmates had yet to lose their courage. They didn't plunge into despair or quit the mission. Clark and Justin have officially joined the military and are soon going to conclude their training with Brutus. Once that's done, they'll be heading to the front lines. They weren't the only ones who were busy, though. Belle is currently an apprentice under Lucielle, and she's also almost done with her magic training. Once all of them are done, they'll pick up Trisha on their way to the front lines and head straight to the battlefield. All of this information bombarded Ray as he still tried his hardest to process the information he was receiving. Of course, mentally processing it was incredibly easy for him. But the emotional weight of everything had to be addressed very slowly in order not to rush past the significance of the events that had taken place. If he treated the matters too heavily, the system would come in, but if he dismissed them too swiftly, he would miss out on the true meaning behind their actions. As such, he had to constantly chew the details he was receiving in order to understand them well. How strenuous. How long before they head to the front lines? Ray finally asked after a few seconds of silence. Less than a month. AHH. I see. Ray didn't seem very surprised. In fact, he was more surprised that they could have waited that long despite what recently happened in the capital. I assumed the dragons would be breathing down our necks. But the fact that Brutus and Lucielle could have stayed back for so long means that the situation at the front lines isn't as severe as I imagined. It was severe. But, surprisingly, the attacks dwindled significantly after the calamity that befell the capital. For real. Ray was met with another surprising news. He wasn't expecting this one. Why would they suddenly stop, especially after the death of a dragon lord? Ray expected a full-blown retaliation from the dragons, but there was no such thing. Perhaps they're being a lot more cautious with the humans, taking time to amass their forces to prepare for an all-out war. In any case, we should also begin to make preparations on our end. Ader said with a slight nod. Ray nodded back at him. You're right. Since we have the window of opportunity to prepare, we should get ready for war. He didn't let the grim state of things bother him that much, though. If things had gone according to plan, everyone would have been in the front lines at this point. Ray knew he didn't have the luxury of worrying too much about auxiliary issues, not when there could be an overwhelming crisis brewing in the background. Sorry, Adonis. But I can't deal with your desertion right now. Ray heaved a sigh. There was too much to worry about at the moment. Is there any good news, at the very least? Ader beamed as the question was asked. Well, the capital's reconstruction is almost finished. We should be done before your classmates depart for the war. Yeah? That quickly? Ray's eyes nearly bulged. Most of his fight with the divine beast was a blur, but he hadn't forgotten the destruction that was wrought as a result. It was too much to be fixed within a few months. What in the world did you do, Ader? Also, the Royal Council finally made the existence of the Otherworlders known to the public. All of Ray's previous thoughts were put on hold once he heard this. After all, this revelation only meant one thing. Everyone knows who you are now, Master. Asterisk. 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 Thanks for reading. Looks like it's no longer the POV of an extra. Or is it? Chapter 558, By Her Side. After the capital fell, first at the hands of the dragons, then to the might of an unstoppable beast, the denizens fell into despair. Humanity was reminded of its place. They were nothing but weak meat waiting to be harvested. The destruction of the largest city in the Alliance caused many to lose hope. The failing economy was the least of their worries, as security and stability became what everyone desired. Those who had some means desired to move south, while the impoverished majority had nowhere else to go. But they were bound to try anyway. In this cesspool of horrors and uncertainty, a beacon of hope was necessary. Which was why the Alliance finally made their move and announced the arrival of the Otherworlders. They revealed how the Otherworlders were the ones who stopped the dragons, and also that the strongest of them all had defeated the divine beast. That public announcement, with the remnant Otherworlders standing on stage in front of the capital's denizens, shook the populace. It was able to rekindle the dying flames of hope that humanity had in their survival. All hope was not yet lost. In a blank, vast room, a girl lay on a bed. She was covered in a thick blanket, and the bed she was in seemed to swallow her while with its sheer size. What seemed to be a veil of thin layered fabric covered her from all sides, all dangling from the ceiling of her bed. Sparkles of energy danced around her, like miniature stars, and her complete white attire made her almost seem like a lucky bride on her wedding day. She even had a ring on her finger, displayed thanks to her posture, with both hands on her stomach as she lay peacefully. This girl was no bride, though, neither was she lucky. Her long brown hair was scattered all over the bed, and her eyes were tightly shut due to her slumber. With how she barely moved her body, though, one would think she was dead. But no. She was very much alive. The fact that she was still breathing, albeit very slowly, proved it. Alicia White had only fallen into an eternal slumber. I'm sorry. The voice that echoed within the room came from the boy who knelt next to her bed. His right eye rested keenly on her as the other one was covered by a black eye patch. Something moist formed, glinted within his eyes, but that was all that happened. No tears flowed, even as he tightly held the white blanket atop the bed. I know me saying this changes nothing. You probably can't even hear me. He forced his heart not to race, and he used all his strength to ensure none of his physiological reactions passed the breaking point. Ray feared what would happen if he allowed it. I'm so sad, but I can't allow myself to be. He so badly wanted to cry, but he already knew the tears wouldn't come. Ray, at this moment, was in agony. If I hadn't been so cowardly, you wouldn't have been forced to do this. After Ader told him everything, Ray had to analyze everything by himself. After their discussion, he asked for some alone time and decided to finally visit Alicia. Just as Ader said. She was still asleep. Her body still looked perfect. She had immaculate skin, and incredible beauty. Ray couldn't see her amber-colored eyes, but he already knew they were guaranteed to be amazing too. His vision trailed all over her body until he spotted the ring on her finger, the very ring he gave her back in the library. I fuck. Ray tightened his face as he squeezed his hands even tighter on the sheets. His heart felt like it would burst, but he kept everything under control. What were you thinking about when it all happened, I wonder? He sniffed, looking at her with a teary eye. When I was declared dead, when Snow died, when the Capitol went up in flames. What was going on in your mind? All the guesses Ray made just caused him to feel all the worse. I didn't want things to end this way. You might even hate me now. But, with a single blink of his eye, all the signs of tears vanished, and a determined gaze appeared in its stead. I'll fix this. I'll bring you back. With both ends, Ray had access to any and all kinds of magic. For magic that were previously assigned as skills to him, he could now use them even without their corresponding skills. However, for new and unknown magic, he would have to learn about them at least, to some degree. However, there was something else. Based on his pre-existing knowledge of magic, his experience witnessing its use, and the powers at his disposal, Ray was not only capable of using magic without chance or delay. He could also somewhat create his own magic. All I have to do is visualize its effect. To do what I want it to do. Ray already practiced this in his room, by creating all sorts of models with wind magic despite having no knowledge of the spell prior to activation. By visualizing the effects he desired, he could mold his mana into the desired result and practically make a magic spell from scratch. And now, I'm going to make a healing spell that will cure you of this ailment. Since his magic was on the divine level, there was pretty much nothing that could resist it. Perhaps another divine tier could, but would still have some effect for sure. As a result, Ray was at least confident of systematic progress even if he couldn't heal her all at once. Visualize what you want. He removed his eye patch and allowed his full vision in light mode to take over. With this, he could see everything in the room at full capacity. Mana flow, patterns, their origin, destination, and the excess particles, even the ones invisible to him before. Perceiving all of these allowed him to look at Alicia in a completely different light. Her entire body was shrouded in some kind of darkness, it looked dreadful and horrid. Why would Ader give Adonis something that could potentially lead to this result? Ray was tempted to blame his familiar, but he desisted from it. Adonis was incredibly resistant to curses, so using the item would have had no downsides for the hero. Enough about that. He narrowed his eyes as he sighed shallowly. Name Alicia White. Race human. Class absolute tamer. Level 112. Life force, 110. Mana level, 210. Combat ability, 200. Stat points, 0. Skills. Skills. Alignment lawful good. A pet lover who desires to return home, but cannot afford to see others in a state of distress. Her skills and class are in perfect synergy with her. Negative status condition, permanent sleep. Cursed level, extreme. Let's begin. Asterisk. 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 Thanks for reading, everyone. What do you think? Will Ray succeed? Chapter 559, Curse from the World. Booyish. Echoes of wind danced all around the room, as torrents swirled all over Ray. Green light sparked, followed by bright white, and eventually gold. All this energies kept evolving, until they finally reached the level that Ray desired healing magic that was on the divine tier. I no longer have my skill, but this is much better. He smiled as his hands flowed with bright golden light. They seemed to invigorate everything around them. Sparks of white still danced around the golden glare, and before he realized it. Haha. Yes. Ray was chuckling to himself. This is it. With widened eyes, his irises reflecting the golden light on his palms, he neared Alicia's sleeping body. This should do it. He was well aware that Ader was much stronger than he previously gave him credit for. But there really was no way an imperfect item that he created would be able to resist the healing magic birthed by his two divine skills working in tandem. Without wasting any further time in Thioghite, Ray pushed his hands forward and touched Alicia with them. The darkness surrounding her tried to resist, but he was most definitely stronger. His power made it through, and the golden surge of light made its way all around her body. In a single moment, she was brimming with golden light. Ha! Ray's eyes widened as the bright glow remained evident in his eyes. He watched as his magic did its wonders and waited for her to flick her eyes open. But healing magic failed. Target's curse cannot be healed by magic. Huh. Ray's eyes slightly widened as he saw the panel open up in front of him. Exactly at that moment, the golden light that had been surrounding Alicia was engulfed by the darkness, causing it to vanish forever. He failed. Before Ray could even think about it, or process the implications of what he had just seen, his lips practically moved on their own. Try again. Once more, the golden light appeared. It went through the same process and covered Alicia from head to toe. But healing magic failed. Target's curse cannot be healed by magic. He received the same rude awakening. Try again. The same thing happened. Again. Nothing changed. Try. No matter how hard he tried, or how many times he used his healing magic, it didn't work. Until finally, he nearly ran out of mana. Why isn't it working? I'm missing something, aren't I? For all he knew, as a skill couldn't cure curses. He faced that problem against the dark undertaking. That was why, in making his own healing magic, he factored that and made it so that his method would cure all negative status conditions and even alleviate curses. The fact that his magic activated meant those conditions had to have been fulfilled. Yet, why wasn't it still working? Ader. What's going on? Ray finally had to utter, after trying hard to think of something to no avail. Whoosh. A swirling dark mist appeared behind Ray, and instantly Ader emerged with a solemn look on his perfectly carved face. Curses are internal manifestations of the world's laws, Master. Healing magic, no matter the tier, won't work on it. Laws such as gravity and time existed, and with magic, those laws could be harnessed and bent to the whims of the user. But that didn't change the fact that those laws remained. Another kind of magic, say fire magic, could not interfere with those laws, but would have to operate within the bounds of it. Curse magic exists to somewhat shape the invisible and downright dangerous nature of that law, but it's impossible to dispel it with magic like healing. Ader said. Somehow, the explanations only made Ray feel all the more frustrated. You created the item, didn't you? Why can't you dispel the curse yourself? I indeed made the item, but the curse wasn't mine. What? This world inflicts a curse as a consequence of certain things. It usually comes as a result of breaking certain bounds, like the natural law of existence. I don't understand a thing you're saying. Ray growled as he turned back to look at Ader. His overflowing anger was instantly removed, most definitely by the system, leaving him with nothing but a glare that had lost its luster. In simple terms, it's similar to how gravity dictates that whatever goes up comes down. In terms of curses, when you do something unnatural, a negative consequence follows. It was the same way overusing a skill would end with a negative status condition of exhaustion. Or by overstraining one's muscles, a ligament could tear. Commit a crime, and you would get punished. These were examples of the consequences that followed extreme actions. A natural way of life. In that same vein, by forcefully reaching the very heights of a skill, one would have to be cursed as a response from the world. It's like cheating and getting scolded at the aftermath. Adonis could avoid it due to his privilege as the hero. Ray could also do the same since he had been granted similar privileges by the world. But not Alicia. What if I had a skill? A curse magic skill? Maybe it could work. I doubt it. It would be different if someone cursed you with magic, but this is pretty much a curse that comes from the world itself. It was similar to how class privileges could not be altered unless someone changed their class. Though, if you had a curse skill, that would be different. As Ader said this, he rubbed his chin. Curse skill? Isn't that what I just said? No. Curse skill and curse magic skill are different. Huh. At this point, Ray was slightly confused. He looked at Ader in a strange way, as though expecting an explanation from him. As expected of the familiar, he picked up on this very quickly. Magic is a product of sentient understanding and evolution. Humans, dragon. They learn magic, which is how they understand the laws of the world and how to bend it to their whims. Once they reach a certain level of proficiency, a skill is unlocked. Sometimes, they are naturally born with this ability as well. So you'd get something like or as a skill. So far, Ray perfectly understood. Frustration still tugged at his heart, and he found himself slightly distracted by Alicia and his concern for her. Still, he paid attention. Skills in themselves are not sentient dependent, and they are simply given by the world. They're similar to privileges in a way, and so they're not limited to the sentient capabilities. I don't get it, Ray muttered. For example, is a skill in itself, and it's not magic. It relies on something beyond the reach of magic, since it summons creatures from another world. Is another example. These are all skills that transcend the limits of what magic can do. Ray began to rub his own chin before realizing it. So, there's a difference between and skill. Yes. Other than the fact that you'd need to cast a soul to generate the first, unless you have a skill like or, and you are restricted by those spells. The skill allows free reign over fire, depending on tiers. It's basically a pass given by the system to use that which is within its bounds. I see. So a skill would allow me to interact directly with the curse that's afflicting her, while would only be able to affect curses within the bounds of magic itself. Correct. You learn fast, Master. Ray couldn't feel happy for his achievement even if he wanted to. He still didn't understand the details of what Ader was talking about, and frankly, he didn't have the strength to. All this time, he thought he was only delaying the inevitable so he could prepare his heart when he finally met and woke Alicia up. But now, he realized he couldn't do it at the very least, not as he was. I'm such a joke. He smiled at himself as he removed his hand from Alicia, still seeing the darkness overshadow her. He covered his eye with the eye patch, causing his vision to return to normal mode. With that, he could no longer see the depressing side of the girl he loved being consumed by darkness. Is there really no way to wake her up now? Anything I can do at all? Well. Before Ader could say any further, both he and Ray sensed something beyond the door of the room, and they instantly knew what it was. Ader stared at Ray with curious eyes, as if asking him, "What will you do now?" Ray sighed and rose to his feet, still remaining by Alicia's side, as the doors were pushed open and the people outside were granted a view into the vast expanse. It was the first time in months that Ray had seen them, and he could feel the building tension as he rested his gaze on the group that stood outside the room. Justin, Clark, Belle, Lucy L., and Brutus. All of them had surprised expressions on their faces, and rightfully so. This was also the first time in months that they were seeing him. It's been a while. Asterisk. 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 Thanks for reading, everyone. I'm sure you were all waiting for this moment. Well. At long last. They've reunited.